Hello everyone, I hope that you're having a great day. In this video, I'll be breaking down the top 5 most OP changes in patch 8 of Baldur's Gate 3. There's 12 new subclasses, 5 new spells, some fixes to some items in the game, and many new synergies I'll be exploring in this video. And the first thing, I just got to talk about it, it's Booming Blade. It's very overpowered. The reason why it's so overpowered is you get to use it per turn, and it's basically like a free smite. This makes the Eldritch Knight so much more powerful. Now, at first, it doesn't actually add any extra damage, but as you get up to level 5 and then eventually level 10, it gives you an additional 1d8 of thunder, then 2d8 of thunder. In addition to that, whenever the target moves, they take 1d8, 2d8, and eventually 3d8 of thunder damage. There's a lot of synergies here. The reason that it's so powerful is it's just a free ability to add extra damage to your weapon attacks. So much like the Paladin is powerful for adding Divine Smite with their radiant damage on it, Booming Blade does much the same, and it's available on a lot of different classes. Even the Fighter, which makes the Eldritch Knight, actually this is kind of where this is going. The Eldritch Knight previously was just, it would go around, it would do throwing attacks. Now it's perfectly viable to use actual Eldritch Knight abilities and not be a thrower. It's still good to be a thrower at the end of the day, but getting Booming Blade makes this so much more powerful. A big reason why this is so overpowered is the Eldritch Knight has war magic, so after you cast a cantrip, you can make a weapon attack as a bonus action. Cast is kind of loosely interpreted here because I'll show you here if we were to do our attack. So we got Booming Blade for our first action. This, unlike tabletop, which uses your full action, you can actually go with that, you can do your extra attack here. So we did 1 attack, here's 2 attacks, and then you can follow it up with your 3rd attack. And then we got our bonus action attack. So yeah, you get 4 attacks with this. That is absolutely crazy. So yeah, you can see it right there. We got 4 attacks in with that. Actually crazy. So with the Booming Blade cantrip, you can literally get 4 attacks as a fighter, and that's just very powerful. The Fighter isn't the only class to take advantage of it. And another thing too with the Eldritch Knight, it's got some cool new abilities here that really come from that. So you get the Eldritch Strike. Obviously, whenever you do a weapon attack, it gets disadvantage on its next saving throw against a spell you cast before the end of your next turn. So then you can actually land your hold persons a little bit more frequently, which is kind of cool. So yeah, this is a major change, not only for the Eldritch Knight, but things like the Shadow Sorcerer get this, the Blade Singing Wizard get this, the Hexblade Warlock get this. You see where I'm going? This becomes extremely powerful extremely quickly because not only the Hexblade being one of the best new subclasses, the Blade Singing Wizard's a lot of fun too for those that like spell casting alongside using a weapon attack, because the Blade Singing Wizard can get an extra attack at level 6, it can do Booming Blade, and it can also use Shadow Blade. It becomes very powerful very quickly. I posted a few different builds on it because, I mean, Shadow Blade being its own special thing, we'll get to that eventually, but Booming Blade makes the Eldritch Knight very powerful now. So yeah, you get some pretty cool abilities. You can still do your weapon bond, and this actually makes it very viable to use the Sharp Spear of the Evening if you're doing an evil run, because with this you get blind immunity, you can pop darkness, you can hide out in this, and you can continually cast your Booming Blades, and yeah, you're unstoppable. Booming Blade really did change the meta of Baldur's Gate 3 for the better or worse. I don't know at this point. I think it's fun though. Also a cool synergy before we move on to the next topic. I posted a build guide yesterday for a Blade Singing Wizard, 6 levels of that to get the extra attack. And then if you take 6 levels of the Tempest Cleric, you get the pushback on your thunder damage. So that negates one of the biggest downsides to this, because to get that extra 3d8 of thunder damage, the target has to move. So what you can do is hit them with this, they get pushed back. If they're a melee attacker, they'll have to move to come and attack you, and then they'll take that 3d8 of thunder damage. Very, very powerful. Next, we got ourselves an absolute tank of a class. This is actually the true tank of Baldur's Gate 3 now with the Oath of the Crown. You get Righteous Clarity here, adding an extra bonus to your proficiency, so +4 to attack rolls at higher levels, which is nice. So if you have a great weapon master fighter, they're much more likely to land their shots now. This lands for 10 turns. But the big thing about this build is when we get to level 3 and the Champions Challenge. This is a bonus action ability. Now, where this becomes crazy, so you can challenge the enemies around you in a 9-meter radius, which is absolutely large. So this makes it so that they have disadvantage on anyone else other than you. So it makes them much more likely to attack your character. Where this becomes powerful is it's going to, 1, protect your entire team, because if the AI still makes them attack your wizard or your sorcerer, they're going to have disadvantage on that attack roll. And this lasts for 10 turns. Now, it also is nice because it directs the attackers to focus on your paladin. It's a little bit different than the goading attack that the bear from the Beastmaster Ranger gets. Where this becomes massive is that per short rest, you can make everyone get disadvantage on attack rolls against your entire team. You're very tanky as this, so this is going to be great for a class that if you want to maximize your armor class, you want to do it on this one because they can resist all the attacks, direct attacks from your team. And on top of all of that, they also get Spirit Guardians. This is an underrated class. I think it's just because the Vengeance Paladin is so good. You also get a heal too, which is kind of nice, but there's some other abilities here, like getting Spiritual Weapon. Why this is so nice is that the Maul can actually apply disadvantage on wisdom saves, so you can land commands or hold person much more better when you got Spiritual Weapon. So it just gives you another good bonus action ability, but the big thing here is Divine Allegiance. So when an ally within 1.5 meters of you takes damage, you can use your reaction to magically substitute your own health for your allies, taking the damage instead of them. They take it as radiant damage as well. So what's nice about this is you can keep your teammates alive by one, using the Champion's Challenge to direct attacks towards yourself. And if they still end up getting attacked through the disadvantage that they'd have, you can substitute your health. So you want to pump yourself full of Constitution to keep yourself alive. And on top of that, there's another nice benefit. Level 9 Spirit Guardians. So this becomes really cool because if you're standing beside your team, you're going to protect somebody, and they'll also take radiant or necrotic damage when you get close. So this actually works perfectly if you do radiating orb builds, because if with radiating orbs, you can get a -10 to enemies' attack rolls. So combined with Spirit Guardians, which will reduce the, will stack your Spirit Guardians, they're going to have a reduction to their attack rolls. They're going to have disadvantage on their attack rolls. You actually keep your team alive. I see a lot of people saying that this is not a great subclass, and I actually disagree. After playing with it quite a bit, it changes the way that you experience and play the game. Taking this one step further, you also get the improved Divine Smite at level 11, so this will add additional 1d8 of radiant damage to your attacks, which is further stacking your radiating orbs just on a regular melee attack. And on top of this, we can actually do a cool new multi-class by adding in the Hexblade Warlock, so you can build entirely around your charisma and around Constitution to keep yourself alive. And on top of this, then you also get access to our previous most OP with the Booming Blade cantrip, because you can see there an extra 1d8 radiant, an extra 2d8 thunder, and then that extra 3d8 thunder if they move. Actually crazy. So yes, I think this combination with 11 levels of Paladin and 1 level of the Hexblade is very strong, because you can do a Divine Smite, a Booming Blade, Divine Smite, a Booming Blade. You can do it all. Now, where this becomes really strong is you get 1 Spirit Guardians to keep your team safe. You get Aura of Protection, which can give a Constitution or Charisma modifier to saving throws, so you get upwards of +6 or +7 to Constitution saving throws. You get Revivify, you can keep your team alive. You got the Turn the Tide, and this is the range of the Turn the Tide and the Champion's Challenge. As I mentioned, that's a pretty large radius. You can set that up so that everyone in this area will be compelled to attack you. I can't say enough good things about it, because not only we got Aura Protection keeping us in a 3-meter radius safe, if you're sticking near your spellcasters, they're going to be in good position. Obviously, that opens you up to getting hit with things like Fireball and Volleys and all that, but adding the proficiency bonus to attack rolls, adding healing, adding the Champion's Challenge, and not to mention, you got Lay Hands, which can do upwards of 44 healing and even remove diseases from a target. Not really your best option for healing, but it's nice that it's a guaranteed 44 healing and not like the other heals where it's like 1d8 of this. You got guaranteed heals, you got aid. This is a very protective class. I know the action economy of Baldur's Gate 3 rewards you for being aggressive, but this is an entirely new way to play, and I have to highlight this because I've seen some comments saying that this is terrible and garbage. Why would you want to play this way? Hey, some people like to play with their significant other and wants to play more of a tank role. This is perfect for that, being able to protect your teammates with not only Aura Protection, the Champion's Challenge, the Divine Allegiance taking damage for somebody else. You also get the Warden of Vitality, which you can heal as bonus action. You got Aura of Courage, which can prevent those from being frightened. You got all sorts of different buffs. You can add radiant damage to everyone's weapon attack rolls with Crusader Mantle. And on top of that, if you're using Radiant Orb gear like the Luminous Armor, you can add a bunch of Radiating Orbs. You can stack 10 Radiating Orbs like in no time at all. And also Booming Blade and Flexing Condition too. So yeah, this is really strong, underrated for sure. And that's why I want to include this on this video. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the Blade Singing Wizard. This is more powerful than people realize, and for a number of reasons. So Abjuration is probably the true best. You can get the Arcane Ward, you can use all the cheese abilities to use Armor of Agathis and proc opportunity attacks and get so that you just keep dealing cold damage, but that's not as fun as just going around spell slinging and blade singing. So with the Blade Singing Wizard, you get a level 1 Booming Blade, At level 6, you get the extra attack. But what makes this so nice is you can actually use a variety of different abilities to make this as powerful as possible. So with mage armor, any armor that gives a +2 to your armor class, like the vest of soul rejuvenation, you can get your armor class up to like 25 wearing clothing. So that's pretty cool. Even the robe of the weave works perfectly here with mage armor, because this will add a +2 and eventually a +4 to your armor class. You can literally get your armor class up really high, especially with mirror image. You can get it up to the 40s. So you're tanky. You can also use a bunch of different abilities here. But the big thing I want to talk about is this multi-class potential, because at level 6, we get the extra attack. Now, where this becomes crazy is most subclasses get their special abilities at level 5 or level 6. So we can actually multi-class. As previously mentioned, you could multi-class 6 levels of the wizard with 6 levels of the Tempest cleric to get a pushback on your booming blade so that they have to take that physical damage if they're a melee attacker. So there's some very cool synergies here with a bunch of other subclasses, like even the Star Druid has some fun combinations. The Shadow Sorcerer allows you to cast darkness and see within it, and also get the Hound of Ill Omen at level 6. So the Blade Singing Wizard actually offers a lot of fun ways to play the game. There's also actually gear that can help out with this. Like if you just want to use the Warped Headband of Intelligence, you can do that. This will set your intelligence to 17, and then you can use the Gloves of the Battle Mage's Power, which is now fixed, which is huge. And when you hit a target with a spell or cantrip that uses a weapon, you gain Arcane Acuity, and this can stack up to +10 to your spell save DC. So yes, you may not have the highest intelligence here with only a +3 to your modifier. This can give you a +10, so that becomes less of a worry. You don't even have to use that though. You could go all in on intelligence and then use the Helmet of Arcane Acuity, which gives you 2 stacks whenever you deal weapon damage. Crazy. The Gloves of Battle Mage's Power will work if you do a melee attack with Shadow Blade or if you do Booming Blade, because if you hit with a weapon or a spell, use a cantrip, that will give you the Arcane Acuity. I also, one of my favorite multi-class with the Blade Singing Wizard is to take 10 levels of Blade Singing Wizard. You get the Song of Defense, which you can use 5 times a spell level to reduce the damage from that attack that you take. And what you can do with that is take 2 levels of the Paladin. You get level 6 spell slots, and you can do Divine Smite, Booming Blade, stack up your Arcane Acuity with the Gloves of Battle Mage's Power. This makes the Blade Singing Wizard very powerful. So it's a great multi-class. I know people love multi-class in here. 6 levels of the Blade Singing Wizard will give you that extra attack, and then you can stack this whatever you like, because the Blade Singing is pretty nice. You can't have a shield equipped, so you have to have something like that, and you get a +3 and then eventually a +4 to your armor class. Can't wear medium heavy armors or shields, but even using something like the Wave Mother's robe here and then also taking your mage armor, we can get a very high armor class. You can't wear the Helmet of Arcane Acuity with that, so you'd have to go with like the Headband of Intelligence and the Gloves of the Battle Mage's Power, because these don't actually count as armor, which is perfect because they look like armor. So then we can do our Blade Song here. We can do our Mage Armor. This will just continually further stack your overall armor class. And then with Mage Armor, you can get that a whole lot higher. I didn't min-max this, but you can get it up to 26 easily. And then with the Mirror Image, you can get that up to like 35. Yeah, it's crazy. Not to mention the attack animations are just fabulous on this. Sorry, Karlak. But you got that little leg kick attack there. It looks awesome. So the Blade Singing Wizard, not only is it stylish, it's a very great multi-class combination, and I think it's great. So it multi-classes with pretty much any caster. It can multi-class with the Arcane Trickster Rogue. It can multi-class with a lot of things, which is awesome to see. So yeah, I just had to highlight this one because it's another class like the Oath of the Crown Paladin that is more powerful than people realize. This wouldn't be a proper video if I didn't end up talking about the Hexblade, so let's just get right into it. The Hexblade, one of the best now single level dips in Baldur's Gate 3. Previously, the War Cleric was one of the best ones. For most classes, it still is the best level dip because it gives you 3 bonus action attacks. But with the Hexblade, charisma scaling for your weapon attacks. So for any charisma class, a single level will make it so you don't have to use dexterity or strength for your weapon attack rolls. And you can potentially give a 20% chance of applying Hexblade's curse on your attacks. This will also increase your critical hit chance, give you additional damage equal to your proficiency bonus. And if you get to level 6 of the Hexblade, you can raise an accursed specter from them. It also gets access to some cool spells like Wrathful Smite and Shield. Now there's another thing here that I want to talk about with a new spell that was added in patch 8, and that is Staggering Smite. Now this may not seem as good as it is, the reason being it uses your bonus action. I've actually had some people tell me it's garbage because you use your bonus action, but hear me out on this. This adds a 46 of psychic damage to your attack and possibly stagger a target so it can't take reactions, more likely to miss. What makes this so powerful is Shadow Blade, because we can use a 48 plus a 46 of psychic damage. Now this gets even further strong when we talk about the Resonance Stone, which adds vulnerability to psychic damage to all those that are nearby us. So You can see there, they have a vulnerability to it. They have a vulnerability to it. So we can cast our Shadow Blade here, and you can upcast this too if you have higher level spell slots. This is in the highest level. Level 5 spell slots will give you the highest. So even just this, a 3d8, eventually a 4d8. Also with the staggering smite, you can see there upwards of 56 damage, which is doubled. This would end up being like 64 damage, and then that's doubled, and it's crazy. So for a single weapon attack that's strong, and then you can follow it up with just a regular old melee attack, very powerful. So the reason that this is such a crazy combination, again, Resonant Stone, very powerful, and this also gives you advantage on attack rolls against lately or heavily obscured targets. So most people that you'll end up attacking, you're going to have advantage on it, because you can see there, lately obscured is very vague. You can also drop down darkness or Hunger of Hadar, and that counts as darkness, so then you can go up, do your attack against them. You're gonna have advantage. This counts as shadows too, by the way. You can see, doesn't look like it's darkness, but we have advantage on our attacks. So that's crazy. It only works on melee attack rolls, but getting a 99% hit chance is great. However, this is also nice because if you have the Hexblade's curse on a target, it's going to reduce their, or it's going to increase your critical hit chance by 5%. But when you have advantage on attack rolls, you roll 2 die. So you have a double chance of hitting a critical hit. This becomes even crazier because here's so many gear you can use to increase your critical hit chance. So you're pretty much likely to land your critical hits, and that just becomes absolutely unstoppable in terms of combat. So the Hexblade Warlock is pretty crazy in Baldur's Gate 3. I had to mention it here. You guys probably knew when you saw the video title. This is the most effective new class that was added to the game. I like the Blade Singing Wizard and the Oath of the Crown Paladin. Both offer some cool new ways to play the game, but something about just one-shotting everyone that comes within your path. And also, if you were to multi-class and get the extra attack, outside of Honor Mode, you can get 3 attacks with this, so that's probably a potential of 3 one-shots in a turn. This is crazy for a melee attacker, and I just had to highlight it. You also get medium armor proficiency whenever you take the Hexblade, so yeah, it's quite strong. Now, I want to give a couple honorable mentions first to the Death Domain Cleric, because there's a new cantrip in town with the Toll the Dead. There's also the Bursting Sinew, and also the again, Toll the Dead. So with this Death Domain Cleric, you get the Reaper. Your necromancy cantrips could target 1 creature, can now target 2. This is a pretty big early game power spike, because now you can do Toll the Dead on 2 enemies at level 1. So that's a potential 2d12 of necrotic damage on 2 targets. So that's really nice, because early game, there's not many great damage options. And then at level 2, you get the Touch of Death, which allows you to add extra necrotic damage to your attacks. This also counts if you use Inflict Wounds. Act 1 doesn't have a whole lot of necrotic resistance, but Act 2 does. Where this becomes beneficial is we also get the ability to ignore resistances at level 6. So when you get to the Shadow Curse lands, you'll ignore those necrotic resistances that are everywhere. So this further powers this up, and anything that's immune to necrotic damage is likely going to take double damage from Radiant, which we still have a lot of spells in. So I have to give an honorable mention to the Death Domain Cleric. It's, after playing with it quite a bit, I think it's pretty solid. I like the Tempest, I like the Light. Death Domain is now climbing up there in terms of effectiveness. I still think Tempest is absolute best, but I had to highlight that. The other thing I want to talk about is the Barbarian. Now, they did nerf it a bit. Previously, the Barbarian would get the Tavern Brawler bonus added to Elemental Cleaver. The Giant Barbarian gets at level 6. It can add cold damage, fire damage, acid damage to your thrown attacks. But the reason I want to talk about this is it now lets us throw any weapon that we want in the game. If you wanted to throw your giant or your great sword, you can now do it and allow it to actually do its full combat effectiveness. So that in itself is really cool, because it's now actually a powerful option to use anything throwing, only if you're the Giant Barbarian. Now, I still think the Throw Zerker is more powerful after the Elemental Cleaver nerf and makes it work as it is intended to work. I think that the Throw Zerker is slightly stronger, but the Giant Barbarian is still very great. So I just want to highlight that. Now, the absolute best thing I think that they added to the game, I know Booming Blade is probably the most game changing, but I actually think that Shadow Blade, if you want to min-max damage without cheating, the Shadow Blade is the best way to do it. So that's what this is about. The final most OP change, it's Shadow Blade. I can't ignore Shadow Blade, is effectiveness. Like we talked about the Booming Blade, we talked about the Hexblade Warlock, and the Shadow Blade. So this is kind of all 3 of those combined together. The Shadow Blade, now I have this one upcasted, 48 plus 8 psychic damage. It's a potential 40 damage on a melee attack. That is again doubled with the Resonant Stone. So if we were to, I'm not going to attack him because we'll one-shot him ruthlessly, but you do a ton of damage on your melee attacks. So boom, we go ahead with an attack here, 60 damage on a single attack. If we go ahead with a staggering smite, poor Will is likely going to get one shot. So I'll just do the critical hit just to show it off. 86 plus 42 damage on a single attack. That is absurd. So yeah, this is without question one of the biggest changes to the game. And it also will stack your arcane acuity because they fixed the battle mage's power gloves. So not only are we got multiple enhancements here. We can use charisma for our shadow blade attack rolls. We can hide out in darkness because the warlock gets the ability to see in darkness. And that's why I mentioned multi-classing the shadow sorcerer with the blade singing wizard, because the blade singing wizard can get this. It gets an extra attack, and then the shadow sorcerer can hide out in darkness. Darkness is one of the most overpowered spells in the game because the enemy's AI can't do melee attacks towards you. They can't do range attacks. They have to do throwing attacks, and they're not always the best at doing that. So darkness will power up your shadow blade because it'll give it an advantage on attacks. So anyone that's dumb enough to go into your darkness is going to get slapped around by your shadow blade. We got the staggering smite there to 64 damage, as I mentioned previously, can be doubled up to 128. And that's not even talking about the half orc criticals or any extra bonus that you can get there. The shadow blade is just absolutely absurd. Now you can also do a little cheese here I'm going to show off. So if you didn't have a shadow blade here, you can use the staff of spell power and get the free cast that it gives to be able to give yourself a free shadow blade, because it'll replace the staff in your hand right away and it just goes back to your inventory. So yeah, you get, if you're a warlock with your limited spell slots, you can get a free cast of it and you can still do 2 staggering smites, which is crazy damage. And then you can follow booming blade. The power of Shadow Blade is unmatched. I don't think there's a more powerful weapon in this game. The Diva Mace kind of, but that's glitchy. This is an actual intended mechanic in the game. It's a light weapon. You can use glitches to make a permanent Shadow Blade, which is a 2d8 Shadow Blade. It doesn't actually get the 48. So you can have a main hand 48 and offhand 2d8. The Blade Singing Wizard can do that. I do have a video on my channel on how to make a permanent Shadow Blade. So if you really wanted to make a whole team of Shadow Blades and use Resin Stone, you can cheese the game really that way. So it is very powerful. I can't ignore how strong Shadow Blade is, so I had to include it here. So yeah, it's powerful. That was the most overpowered 5 changes that we got in Baldur's Gate 3's patch 8. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Hit the subscribe button below if you haven't already. Tell me which change you think is the most impactful for the game, and I'll see you all in the next video. Have a great day.